Hello, everyone. Today, I have a big pleasure of speaking with Athena Laz, that is a best-selling author of Woman Who Dance in the Dark, The Alchemy of Your Dreams, that I have here in Polish, the Sisterhood of Seers Oracle Deck, and the Deliberate Dreamer Journal. Her books have been translated into more than 13 languages, which I find super impressive. And she is an intuitive psychologist and lucid dream teacher who helps thousands of people all around the world connected to spirit and the psyche through the medium of dreams, mysticism, intuition, as well as archetypal and symbolic work. So, welcome, Athena. I'm so happy to have you here with us today. And I would like to maybe start by asking you, what first drew you to work with dreams?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to speak to you, Joanna. And to answer your question, dreaming has always been something that was very meaningful to me. So when I was younger, I had a lot of lucid dream experiences, but did not know that that's what they were. And so I would have these kind of like nightly adventures, I guess, and sometimes some quite intense experiences as well, specifically in the in-between kind of passages. But my family, my parents were very open about dreaming and very open-minded, so we would often speak about our dreams. It wasn't something that was not naturally dismissed, but it also wasn't something that was acknowledged, kind of outside of the home. So that's kind of the beginning point for me. And then later when I decided I had become licensed as a psychologist. And at the time I was in private practice for some time. I had worked in clinics with a lot of like trauma patients. And I had this deep love for everything sort of mystically inclined. I had worked at this very metaphysical shop whilst I was training to become a psychologist to earn money. And so I really felt like I needed to bring the two together. And so when I thought, okay, I feel like it's the time to write a book or to make a website for myself as opposed to just, being in practice, I was like, what is it that I want to share with the world? What would be helpful? And I actually wrote two book proposals. And the first one was it was a book on intuition. It was on how we can read waking life symbols and how to connect with that way of tracking. And then I wrote the dream proposal, and that was all about dream work, which later became the Alchemy of Your Dreams. And the intuition book is the book that is now Woman Who Dance in the Dark, which is coming out in September. And so I kind of feel like from the word go, I knew I would be working, I guess, in a way with symbols and with dreaming. But yeah, my path has definitively not been linear. But I have a deep love and passion for dreams. And yeah, I'm just happy I can do it.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I think that the path not being linear, it's like kind of for most of us that happens. But what you said about like that there are actually two sides of the same thing, like working with our intuition and the inner knowing in a waking state as well as the dream state, because this is something that I hold very closely to my heart as well, because one of the reasons why I find dream work so important and why I think that dream work is an incredible tool for helping us in so many things, but also, and maybe especially when we go through some kind of crisis, is that I really believe that through our dreams that are available to us every night, I need to highlight this, we can really connect to this place, to this inner knowing. And because our modern life is, well, quite overwhelming, and there are so many voices and so much noise and so much of everything, which is a blessing and a curse, at least for me, I feel that we really may get lost. Like we really may not know what actually our inner voice is saying to us. That's why being able to connect to our dreams and also to pay attention. And I'm so looking forward to read this new book of yours and to know more about it, like how to read also those signs and those synchronicities and the things that happen to us in waking life. to eventually live life most authentically. This is kind of like something that for me, I realized during all my journey till now, is that it's one of the most important thing. Yeah.
And it sounds so beautiful in the way you explain it, and also like the gifts it offers us. Because like you're saying, when we're in crisis, or when the world feels very demanding and overwhelming, I think so many of us are feeling that right now. You know, it's so easy to fall into distress. And also life also can give you real tangible scenarios where you actually are in very distressing environments. And so to know that you have this resource that you can turn to no matter what's happening, that to me is immensely, just feels like immensely supportive and immensely relieving, because it kind of takes the pressure off. And I think what happens, at least what I've found in my work and working with people, that the more we rely on this, and I don't think it's a thing of perfection. Like, I don't think we ever naturally, maybe we do, but I have not done that, arrived at a point where I feel like, yes, I've got this so perfectly done that I'm, you know, oh, I'm slightly feeling overwhelmed, and I'm tapping into this amazing thing in that immediacy. But it is a process of returning there quicker. And the more we can do that, the easier I feel it gets. And I really do believe that when we approach that wisdom through openness, through listening, through really trying to receive what it is telling us, without our projections, we're generally guided in very positive ways. And then I have found, and I know you found this too, that the world around you then changes. And it's amazing, because it's not through a process of force. It's actually kind of through, it's both. It's a process of actively listening, but you know, you're passive in that you're knowing that there are greater forces that align things or bring things together. So I find that just to be so amazing. And I really feel like collectively where we can feel that. I mean, I think it's rare to speak to people who go, well, I'm not feeling anything that's happening, you know, I'm not being influenced, or I'm not feeling anything in response to what's happening in the collective, you know. So it's definitively interesting times, but our dreams are resourceful for us, you know, they're great resources.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And something that you just said, it's also really important, I think, is that maybe even the foundation level of this work is like showing people that they do know. Okay, because of course depends where you grew up and how your upbringing was. Mine wasn't so open, right? So I was told that I don't know, that someone else knows, that parents knows, and the priest knows, and the teacher knows, and the boss knows, but it was never really me. And I was questioning so many things, and it was really hard to change this belief.
Yeah.
And dreams were actually something that really helped me with that, because one of the most powerful dreams I've ever heard, without going into too much detail about the dream, but there was this one sentence that was said to me that after I woke up, it completely changed this way of thinking. Like, it really totally erased this belief that I don't know, that there is someone else that knows better than me. Was that this lady in the dream told me, but everyone knows where north is. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So, and there was like huge compasses in the dream and all kind of things. But when I woke up, I was like, of course, like everyone knows what their inner truth is, where their north is. It's just the question of tapping into it. And this idea of not doing it by force, something that you also said now, it's really resonates with me too, because again, as you said, we maybe live again in such intense times that we must be doing and producing, and this belief that the more we do, the more we accomplish, and so on. And yes, we need to be active, as you said, but there's also this trust, maybe this knowing that we are able and capable and we can get there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that dream sounds so amazing and so powerful. And isn't it incredible how that one sentence, I mean, changed so much for you? But even now, like you just saying that, I feel like, oh, yes, that's so true. You know, that is so true. There's such resonance. Resonance is such a good word as well. There's such resonance to it. You know, because it moves you in a different kind of way.
And also, I really love that the lady didn't say, you know where the north is. She said, everyone knows, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
see it as a message to the collective that I'm not no special in any way, but everyone can really feel this way. And maybe because of my upbringing or what I went through during my life, this like really, it like really changed me. This, as you said, one sentence, one dream. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I know that did, because here you are talking about dreams, doing all these
That's right.
wonderful things. But it just goes to show, we all have those beliefs that we have to work to reverse, or to really just put down. And something in a kind of similar vein for me was really, I have had all these we were talking about it briefly before we got on, to push record, and I've had all these very intuitive and psychic experiences, and it took me years to be able to just say that out loud, because I really felt like I would be met with shame, that people would judge me, that they would think whatever they would think about it. And it took so much rewriting to be able to just say, like, actually, that's a real part of who I am and how I function in the world. I think it's a natural part of all of us. I think we naturally receive actually psychic information when we sleep. There's huge research that shows that we often can have precognitive dreams as well. So it's not just thinking, it's real tangible experience. And I think that that's something that needs healing, definitely individually, but also collectively, where it's so easy to kind of, it's easier because it helps us make sense of the world, to split things, right? Like even when we talk about dreaming, we go like the waking world and the dreaming world. And that's helpful in language because we need the language parameter. But in reality, they are not split. We are not split. Our awareness is not split. We have a perception that that is the case. We have belief that that is the case because, exactly like what you're saying, most people are taught that that is a very fundamental distinction, or that dreams are like day residue. If you're a modern thinker, telling people that dreams may be something different than like a mental processing or priming you, the evolutionary advantage of it, oh, it's just simply priming you so that you're in safe situations. Yes, it is that, but it's also and something else. And the and something else is the link between the two. And when we heal the link, that is when we feel more integrated. That's when we show up more authentically, because the split, it's like, okay, well, I can see the split outside in the world, but I'm still going to try and move in a way that feels more whole, that is more whole, right? And so I think that is one of the most helpful things to do with dream work. And I think it's one of the easiest way through, because you naturally are given all this content, like whether you like it or not. We go to sleep and most of us will dream. So it's happening whether you like it or not, or whether you pay attention to it and you use it,
Exactly.
So it's
yeah, one of my like selling in quotes points is that, listen, dream work is actually for lazy people, you don't need to do anything. You don't need, you just go to sleep anyway, and then you wake up, and then if you remember something and so on and so on, and I think it's a good one, because it's like, as you said, it's part of us. It's a part of us. And again, I hear this argument a lot that, as you said, like dreams, they're also like only processing memories and so on and so on, right? And I also say, but there is also and I'm not saying that dreams are not helping us consolidate memories and so on, but what I want to say, because of experience I had and so many people all over the world had, like you said, tapping into precognitive dreams or healing in the dreams, like a lot of things that I know they can be too much out there for some people, but they happen, right? And at the same time, I think it can be an advantage of dream work, because I always say that no matter what you believe about dreams, and no matter your religion or your background or your age, where you come from, is that you can take it as far as you like. Like if this is what you believe, that dreams only help you, process memories and process emotions that you can't process maybe in the waking life, amazing. That's already amazing,
Exactly.
That's why I say like this is the best, because I don't ever ask anyone, to change any belief they have about dreams. I invite to maybe have a wider perspective or be open to the experiences. But I always say, like, you can believe wherever you want. You can believe that it's just body processing and mind. You can believe it's messages from the God. You can believe that it's your soul talking. Like, I really don't enter that space at all. I just say, like, as long as you believe that there is something precious for you, like, that's it. That's the only thing. And something that you also said about this division, right? About like saying waking life and dream life. A lot of people say a lot the real life. I always say the waking life and the dream life, right? Because I believe dreams are as real as you said, as everything else that's happening in the waking life. But also you mentioned that they can be connecting us, right? That they connect the division between what we see is real and not real. But also for me, they connect us in a way that is also very close to my heart because of all the conflicts and wars and division that's happened all around the world, is that they connect us as humans. Like it's something that we all have and that we all have access to it. And for me, it's like this point of connection in the world that's so divided, that just constantly try to prove you how different you are from, you know, everyone else. It's like something that, hey, but we all dream, right? We all dream. So yeah.
It's so beautiful to hear this. And I think we're having such a good conversation specifically about two things that I'll mention now, right? The first is that how many times have you had a dream where you're a different person or you're in a different place? I've had dreams where I've been a different race, a different gender. I have been really wealthy, very poor in some of my dreams. And so dreams are so universal in that they connect us exactly like what you're saying to our humanness before all the titles, the identities, the separation that exists, and we can remember our human nature first, right? And I think part of also what you're saying is that we're living in times of extreme conflict and extreme division. And I think this is also kind of why, in a way, I was motivated to write this book that's coming out, right? So it's on an archetype that's not very well known, but it's called the medial woman archetype traditionally, right? But I write about it in a way that's called the medial archetype. And this archetype came from the mind of Toni Wolff, who was Jung's collaborator. She was also his lover at one point. She helped him journey in his unconscious processes. But what this archetype is, what it's one of its most amazing features, and her definition is that it is an archetype that arises when there is extreme polarization, right? And it's a natural mediator, but it's also a mediator between unconscious and conscious imagery. In other words, exactly what we do in dreaming. When we're faced with crisis outside in the world where division is a really real thing, we collectively, I feel, start to dream and remember different ways of moving through the world. And so this archetype, this kind of force, is one that links, what I love about it is it links the dreaming world and the waking world, but it also links the individual to the collective. And it also links the individual, the psyche, to the spirit. So like Toni Wolff, when she wrote about it in the 50s, she meant it in a mediumistic sense. In my work, I look at that, but we take it a bit further. And so I think anyone who's talking about dreams at the moment, or talking about any kind of work that requires introspection, that can offer pathway to healing, that can offer pathway into self-knowing and greater self-understanding, we are stepping into a realm where what comes up isn't always linear, right? And it's not always structural. It can be very structural in the symbolism, but it's so fluid, you know, and in that fluidity, we remember that we're connected. And exactly like what you're saying, you know, there's so many reasons right now to feel like separation is a good idea and division is a good idea. But then, like you're saying, when we remember our like humanness, that we're all human, we're actually all having this shared experience, whether whether we acknowledge that or not. You know, we all have ideas about what it means. Ultimately, none of us really know like, you know, absolutely. I guess we can all say we have deep feelings and beliefs about it, but we are all seeing a truth in maybe the same truth, but in multiple ways, you know. So I think dream work lends us towards empathy, it lends us towards connection, it lends us towards interesting symbols and even new archetypes that can come up in consciousness. And it also lends us towards healing, I think, in magnificent ways. Like, for example, when tsunamis tend to happen, people worldwide will often dream about that. And they may dream about, you know, something may happen in Asia and someone in New York may be dreaming about that. And so you were so fundamentally connected to one another. And we are also fundamentally connected to nature, you know. And so I think that's the great remembering that our time is kind of collectively calling us to acknowledge. And I really think humanity will have to remember quite quickly.
Yes,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more about the quite quickly, especially. So would you like to say a little bit more about the book that it's coming out in September, about this archetype? I must tell you, I'm not that familiar with this archetype. So if you would like to say a little bit more about that.
So she's not a well-known archetype. The medial archetype is often misunderstood, has been named many things, has been forgotten. And I think there's a good reason for that, which I kind of touch on in the book, but it's a long conversation. But in essence, it's really the archetype within us that helps us to mediate inner and outer tension, personal, collective tension. It helps us mediate symbols in waking life and the dreaming life. And ultimately, it helps us move. It helps us remember that we can move fluidly between these things. And we do that through recognizing our awareness mirrored by that archetype. And so it's such a helpful archetype at the moment. There are probably 3 people that I'm aware of that have written about it. So in Woman Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, she wrote about the wild woman archetype. And that, you know, that was all about like reclaiming the wild within and without.
Yeah.
And she did such a great, beautiful book, and such a like classic time. It lasted for such a long time because I think people need the connection to that, that way of living and being, because we haven't healed that necessarily collectively anyway. But so she wrote a very small paragraph about the medial woman in her book. And then there've been probably like 2 other authors that have touched on it, one in a book and one in a academic paper. And
how,
so
yeah, and how did you connect to this archetype? Like how did it came to you?
It's
In a
crazy.
dream, in a waking state?
In a waking state. So I have to go back a little bit, but in 2020, yeah, at the end of 2020, the pandemic had just was like it was peak pandemic time. I was living on a farm. I was very lucky to be on a farm, and I was writing The Alchemy of Your Dreams. And I had done, I don't like to read a lot of other people's work when I write my work so that I'm kind of clear in how I'm presenting information. But I like, you know, I had researched some people's stories that I thought would be interesting and add dimension to the book. And I was writing a paragraph and I was sitting in bed and I just got this full, like, this is the medial archetype. It's meant to come out. It's going to be about division and healing. I wrote a small line about the medial. I'm trying to see if I have a copy of my book. In The Alchemy of Your Dreams, I think in one of the last chapters, I just put like 2 very basic sentences in there. And then I emailed my agent and I said, this is the next book. This is what I want to write on. And then she said, you know, you have to be patient. Of course, there's so many things that go into it. Alchemy needed to come out. And something that I love about books, or at least in the way I have created my journey of creating with these big concepts, is that I sometimes feel books have a life of their own in terms of when they want to come out, as kind of crazy as that sounds. And I think this archetype needs to be remembered now. And I think more people are moving towards that. And so that's kind of how it came up for me. And there was such little information about it, because the woman, Toni Wolff, who wrote it, who conceptualized this archetype, she wrote a very small paper. It's probably like 15 pages. It's called The Structural Archetypes of the Feminine Psyche, or something along those lines. And she outlaid the psyche in 4 fundamental ways, and one of the ways is the medial woman. And it wasn't really, I don't think it was very acknowledged paper in her time. I know some people have written against it, like why it's not a theory we should follow, and other people saying like it absolutely is. But I think because she touched so deeply on topics that are outside of the spectrum of structure that are very quantifiable. It's very hard to say to someone, like, how do you prove that you've had like precognitive dream bar sharing, oh, well, here I wrote it in my dream journal on that date, and then that's what happened. So it's a very hard way to kind of quantify that. And so I think that's part of the reason why we haven't heard about her. But I also think why it's coming up right now, because the world is in such chaos.
Unfortunately, yes. And I think that everything has its timing. So why wouldn't apply to books or, anything that happens? I believe in this divine timing. And probably that's why your publisher first wanted to publish The Alchemy of Dreams and not that book, because maybe some things had to happen, and also ideas came to you, and so it can come now. And unfortunately, yes, it's time of chaos and disarray. And I feel that in any way that we can contribute to with the work we do with the dreams or with intuition or wherever it is, that people want to look at themselves and then look at the other, and maybe first of all, there is this, like, I feel so torn many times between, there is of course the action, like you say, whether it's like protest or it's like being an activist and all kind of stuff like that, that unfortunately I see so many times that it just doesn't bring the results that we wish as humanity. And then it leaves you feeling so powerless, right? Because you say, okay, but what can I do? Well, I'm one person, what can I do? But then there is the other side, which I believe it's also connected to the archetype, that what about me inside and my inner war, in my inner conflict and my inner disconnection? And then what happens if I work with this? And again, I know that it can be a concept that for many people may be too out there, or it doesn't
resonate.
It doesn't resonate, exactly. But if we're already trying to bring peace or harmony or other beautiful things to the world this way of action, of outer action, that I'm not saying it's not necessary. I'm just saying that maybe because we inside us are very also splitted and divided, so we can't manifest it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think that I think people can innately feel that, maybe on an instinctual level, even if intellectually it's difficult to understand how that could be possible, because I feel like we naturally, I would say the predominance of people, at least my experience of this, the predominance of people are actually non-violent, are actually not out there doing insane things. And so it's a very, like, it's a large group of people that are living their lives in an everyday way, that if they could just break, like you're saying, look inwards and go, okay, well, all of us, we all have our stuff. We all have inner conflict about something. We all have division about something. We can also have very good reasons to have a distinction between two things. And I think that doesn't necessarily have to dissipate. And that's something that was so enjoyable for me in terms of writing the book, right? Because we tend to go like, it has to, one side has to give in order for something to balance out. But the thing is, when you're sitting in two extremes, it is so unlikely that that will happen. And so even in like a traditional like Jungian sense, they talk about it in terms of the like transcendental function. It's this natural third that comes up, it arises. And that medial function of the psyche, the medial nature, the medial archetype reminds us of that ability. And what happens is that doesn't dissipate the two pillars, right? So if we just look at it as like, I'm thinking of it kind of in color, because we're both wearing black and white, right? Like if we just think of like black and white as two opposites, right? They're both mirrors in a way to one thing. And the middle point of it, the middle would exist in the full spectrum, right? So we would see like the rainbow colors in between them. And so it's that third function that naturally arises, which creates change. And we don't have to we don't actually have to force that into happening. It naturally happens. So here's a really tangible example of this, okay? Say you've had a repetitive dream about something that is a mirror to an internal process or belief, right? So here's a good one. Most people will have dreams of being chased, so you're being chased, but say the repetitive dream is always in a specific place, it's always a specific feeling state. There is a division between something outside that evokes that feeling response, which then leads to panic and fear. And so we use our dream techniques and our dream dialoguing to look at that and to try and heal the split between it. And we do that in imagery a lot of the time, most of us as dream teachers, right? Or sound, with sound frequencies, deep breath. So you may see yourself standing there at that familiar place and you're observing what's happening. And so instead of running, you maybe turn around and face the thing that is causing that difficulty. You could dialogue with that part of you, or you could clear the scene out completely and just rewrite a new narrative. And when that happens, the opposition of being against something naturally changes. So the imagery naturally changes, right? We are faced with this thing, we change the movement, and by changing the movement, it changes in response. And so that's kind of the third pathway. The minute we change that inner movement, the outside too have to respond because we have instigated that. And so I don't think they cease to exist or won't cease to be in like dichotomy with each other, but there's another pathway. So it's kind of, it's just another alternative for anyone who's kind of feeling very split. So it can be mentally, emotionally, can be spiritually, even dreaming, waking, but it can also be with real world division, For example, I live in an area, I live in Florida. I love living here. My neighbors are from New York. Some of my other neighbors are from Texas. Some are native Floridians. All four of the neighbors who live in the same quadrant have completely different beliefs about what should be happening, politically speaking. But here's the thing. Everybody gets together. We sit, we have like a barbecue. We'll all talk. We will be in discourse. And in that discourse, something changes because we remember our humanness and we remember the connection that actually all of us fundamentally, at least when I'm talking about this very small sample group of the four families, right? We want to be able to function in the world. We want to be safe. We really want to be physically safe. We want to be spiritually safe, emotionally safe, and then also so we can hopefully blossom in our lives, not just about survival, right? And anytime we're in crisis and conflict, it takes us right back to survival, And so the discourse helps us out of that pathway. So I think it's a very big topic, and I don't think there are neat solutions for anything. It's more like a way of moving through the world and recognizing it and choosing to be more balanced in our responses. So the word that I actually like about it is equanimity. So because equanimity doesn't mean that it's changed necessarily, it just means that there's more balance between the two,
Yeah,
So
no, it totally makes sense. And what you said also about that, you believe that most of the people, they want peace and they want harmony. I also believe in that. And for me, dreams are one of the ways to come back to that place, right? Because when we work with our dreams, when we look into our dreams, into our real fears and real desires and all that stuff that come up in our dreams, like we can see this pure place, right? That, as you said, like together with your neighbors, yeah, you may have different ideas of how things should be done, but you all want the same. You want to be safe physically and otherwise, and you want to be able to provide for your families, and you want to be able to enjoy life. Yeah.
And I think it's so hard because when you're thrown into like a crisis or a trauma, the feeling spaces that fundamentally disappears.
Yes.
Right. And so part of the healing work, and actually some often the physical work as well, like structural work, maybe even around you, right, is that you have to rebuild that so slowly in a way so that that natural safety re-arises. So even if it's been knocked down. And I think that that's exactly what dreams provide us with, because they give us the language or the feeling state or the vibrational resonance, which is a huge thing. And through holding on to that, when we wake up, we've been given such good information because it bypasses the thinking mind in a way, gets straight down to it. I think in the same way, there's like epigenetics, you know, and we see how that's been passed down. Like I think the dreaming can help us literally. I think it does it in real time. Like when we're dreaming and we're receiving in that way, that's actually happening in that real time moment. And then when we're waking up, we're receiving memory of that, or the mind is structuring that in a way that is helpful for the psyche to understand. I also understand that belief is quite out there for most people, but the more I do that, that is really what I'm leaning towards, you know. And so I feel like exactly what you were saying earlier, though, you've got what I love about dreaming, specifically actually lucid dreaming as well, is that you don't need to take anyone's word for it. This is what's so liberating about it, right? If you have a few basic tools at your disposal, like you know how to do like one or two really great things in dreaming or with dreaming, you can go and do this for yourself. And you can go and explore as far as you like and as comfortably as you like. And so even if it is just like you were saying earlier, if it's just an emotional regulation, that's amazing. Who doesn't want to wake up feeling better or less burdened about something that's been chasing you since childhood? Okay, yeah, everyone wants to. Well, I think most people would want to, you know, that's a huge generalization. But so I feel like it's just a personal pathway and choice. But I do think what we will see, I feel in the future actually, is that I think shared dreaming is going to become a real thing. Maybe not necessarily like 5 years from now, but I do think like it will be something that's very, very real. I think lucidity is going to enter, it already has. I think it's going to enter in ways that is so interesting and so much more like multivariate and mainstream than it is currently. I think it's going to be so normal. And I think that that is going to change fundamentally how people view the structure of reality, which will change a lot of things, hopefully for the positive, you know. I just think it's the danger, I guess, is it not being commodified for specific use, you know, but that's a whole other.
It's a you know, subject for another episode. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. We'll do all our guesses and we'll see like 5 years down the line.
Let's do that.
I'm right about
it. Could you share with us maybe like a specific dream that you feel that help you in times of crisis? And it can be any kind of crisis, just like maybe an example and how did it help you? What did you do? And so on.
Sure. So I'm just trying to think of maybe like a more recent dream. Let's see what kind of comes up. Okay, it wasn't really like a crisis, but it was a definitive like integration point for me.
All right.
So I was needing to make a big decision about something. I was feeling a lot of fear around it. I was having a lot of doubt. And I had this dream where and this is actually a dream that's in the book, the upcoming book, but it's a good dream, right? So I have this dream where I'm at a game park, but it looks very ancient in nature. It's got like a very old stone. I'm with two people that I know in waking life. One of them decides not to come into the building with us, and he decides to go on the right path. And I say to him, I think if you go that way, it's going to be much harder for you. Because in the dream, I really felt that. And he said, it's what I've got to do. And so, like, we give him something and he goes off. And then the two of us go into the game. And it's this like whole journey into this gamescape. And this a man appears in the dream and he is in water and he's half in water, half out of water. He's holding like a long staff, and I see him. He like gives me smoke in the dream. Then the scene, you know how like dreams are, the scene changes. I'm all of a sudden back in like the game space, moving up these moving ladders, and I recognize that he's behind me and that all I have to do in this dream, because there are lots of like snakes moving along the walls and I'm quite creeped out by that in the dream. So I know if I just hold in the pathway and just go down the middle. This is also at the time of writing the book, right? So it was very in my psyche. Like I could just go down the path, up the path, and I would eventually get out of this game. And then at the end of the dream, I recognize this man is the same man from earlier, but he's much older now. And I'm meant to give him something at the end of it. So there's like this drink stand, and I give him a green juice in my dream. And I like hand it to him, and that's kind of the end of that one segment. And then the dream goes on. It's quite a kind of long dream in that it had like 3 sections to it. But when I woke up, I felt immensely peaceful about the fact that I couldn't really make a wrong decision other than not moving towards something. And so I felt like I was at a crisis of a crossroads, not knowing what to do, really thinking it as much as I could. I literally wrote list after list. I meditated. I did the whole thing. I still felt really uncertain. And it had big consequences, right? There were big consequences for like the next couple of years of my life. So I felt like it was a really big decision. And the dream made me feel like there is something so active about the medial way of living through things. Even in Buddhism, they talk about the middle path, right? There's this very ancient way of living through things that doesn't need to be so chaotic. And the duality later in the dream reappears for me. And the duality is what I was getting stuck in. So when I just decided, okay, well, I'll just show up and move in this way, and that will open the pathway in a much easier sense. And I made a decision and things did move, and they moved in ways that I actually didn't foresee. So not necessarily crisis, like in terms of a trauma, but definitely distress about like having to make a decision and make it quickly and make the right decision. And then so from that dream, I recognize like they're really different pathways. Some of them are easier than the others, like my friend at the beginning of the dream. I think that was very symbolic of that, like recognizing that internally, that there are actually much easier pathways than other pathways. And really acknowledging that and noting that, so that that's not something like I don't believe in like naivety in that way, right? I don't want to take an action and think like, oh, this is going to just like magically work out, when actually you probably know that no, it's not going to. But I also don't want to move through the world in a way that feels so structured when it is feeling like I need more movement between structure and receptivity, and to allow that movement to happen easily. And so that's kind of what that dream gave me. And it also gave me a really good image of a medial archetype in male form, which I had not had, because like I said earlier, this is not really a concept that's spoken about, even though there's lots of imagery and myth. And I'm sure people, if the book does arise in consciousness, they will find lots of images for it, so it was like a dual purpose dream at the same time for me, but also what the work I was doing, and then hopefully for people reading the book. And that's also something that I love about dreams, right? Even especially linking it back to crisis. Okay? We can receive information on a personal capacity that can be so helpful. Like I've worked with trauma patients who have had dreams that have given them like distinctive instructions about like, you get to this place and you go there like your life depends on it, because your life actually does depend on it, right? And then at the same time also understanding that there's like some like movement in that can also be collective, not knowing that like I'm trying to think of a tangible example because it's so like kind of in the ether at the moment. Well, here's one, not exactly crisis, but I had a patient a long time ago when I was still in private practice doing that, and he was clinically depressed and he had a lot of addiction issues and was really working through them very bravely and honestly, and would show up. He was doing like all the hard work, and he'd really hit this like peak point in his treatment. Like he actually didn't really feel to some degree that he should still be like in that healing process. And then he has this dream where he's driving up a cliff and he's driving the car, and if he just like swerved a little bit, he would literally like topple and the car would fall over and he would die. And it was that instinct of like, oh, because everything's going so well, maybe I could just have like one drink, and so that's also like, it is actually crisis in a way, maybe not crisis in an active way, but it's definitively like, oh, that's a trauma response, that is a trauma response. That's just a kind of maladaptive short-term coping strategy, but that dream really helped him because it made him recognize like, oh, I'm doing so well, but look how easy it could be to just like slip, you just turn the wheel and all of a sudden all this hard work goes down the drain, so this really tangible, helpful material, sometimes it's really pragmatic. I've had people literally dream about like needing to go to an office to see a specific doctor, they'll Google the doctor and the doctor will be there, so they've had experiences like that. Just there is so much helpful information in our dreaming, and I think when we're in crisis, the main thing is well, at least my experience of this personally, and then also like art with working with people, crisis, trauma, what it does is it robs us of the fundamental safety of feeling like you can move forward with ease and also to make good decisions because your system is in an overdrive, right? And it is so hard when you're in that state to naturally like calm the body down and the psyche, reweave the psyche to a place of a better equilibrium, right? And so what I think is so helpful in that time is our dreams naturally do that anyway, but we have to recognize like when we're in those moments, how we're thinking about things, it's not necessarily clear. So we need to go for clarity in a way that's helpful for us. And it can be from an outside person, it can be from a dream, can be from a book, whatever it is, there's so many pathways.
Yes. Thank you for sharing the examples, yours and of your clients. And I really think that the whole point for me doing this work and having this podcast and talking constantly about dreams is that I see such a lack of education in the subject of dreams, because I truly believe, again, I cannot confirm that, but I believe that we all have those dreams, those warning dreams or those advice dreams or those healing dreams. But because we don't pay attention to it, like people walk this life thinking that they never had an important dream, that, oh, maybe this happened just to the other person. Oh, it happened to this guy from Athena therapy, but it never happened to me. But the thing is that it most likely did happen to you. You just didn't pay attention to it. And I feel like it's such a resource that we waste, in quote, because of lack of understanding how helpful it can be. And the example of the car on the cliff, it's a perfect example. I had also myself dreams when I felt like driving the car, it's out of control. I'm entering the crossing and cannot stop, and so many things. And it was just like, wow, I am completely out of control, like, wait a minute, where in my life I'm out of control. So again, it does not need to be a huge crisis, right? We don't need to suffer from so complicated PTSD or had terrible things happen to us, even though so many of us experience in personal and collectively terrible things happening to us, right? But even this, like being able to say, wow, what is really happening inside of me without the denial of, no, everything is fine, because I hear it all the time. It's our coping mechanism, and also trying to be positive and the good vibes and stuff that
Right.
goes a little bit
Too far, right?
too
Anything in
far.
excess. Anything
But
in excess.
dreams, they are like the reality check. Like, oh, you
Yeah.
keep telling everyone that you're fine, but you come to me and you tell me you keep having those dreams. So maybe, just a maybe, something is not 100% fine, right?
Absolutely, right. And like I know you know this because you work with dreams, right? But the more we avoid it in waking life, that's when we tend to get the dreaming where it's like repetitive, or we'll have very hardcore nightmares, or we're like in the same
Exactly.
situation or the feeling space because we're not paying attention to something that needs to be addressed. And so the psyche naturally knows how to find balance. It's whole, it's mediated. We don't actually need to control that. It knows what to do, right? In the Alchemy of Your Dreams, I share about how this a man who is amazing, and I've forgotten his name all of a sudden, but he wrote about tidal wave dreams and how veterans, soldiers who would come back from war, many of them would have these experience of having like tidal wave dreams, but not just tidal waves. It would be anything that would flood the dreamer, right? So it could be a group of people chasing you. It could be a wave. It could be being squashed by pillows. I mean, it really could be
Yeah.
anything, but the feeling space is feeling so overwhelmed, so helpless, like you were saying earlier, feeling so powerless. And so when we're in crisis, that is exactly the feeling state that we're sitting with, right? Fear, helplessness, powerless. And when life creates that, if we've lived in an experience that is the reality, for even if it's that moment of time, that needs healing. And I mean, I know that because we connected at the dream conference, right? That what part of the amazing work with dreams currently is that Charlie Murley did that research
That's right.
where he showed with the Institute in California that lucid dreams helped veterans with PTSD literally reverse that in a way. And so it just goes to show that, like, even if we just accept that as like that's a real form of healing, it's a really magnificent form of healing. If you say to someone, well, you could spend 12 hours of your life, it's less than half a day, right? Two working days pretty much, focusing on this thing, and you could go from feeling absolutely fearful, frightened, powerless, overwhelmed because you've experienced all that in reality, right? And you could do these things, and there is a potential that it can help you get to the other side. Most people would say, oh my gosh, that's so amazing, right? And if we look at any single, almost all ancient wisdom traditions or cultures, they talk about dreaming as being
I
very,
always say that. Yeah.
it's like literally collectively they know, they knew, right? We still talk about it, and it's still nowadays it's often like in a mystery. It's like, oh, like the shamans, they do this and they do that, and it's amazing because that is amazing, right? There's a woman who I also wrote about in The Alchemy of Your Dreams, who she had no interest in dreaming really, and she did a lot of philanthropic work, and she had an experience of seeing these dream these shamans from a tribe somewhere, she didn't know at the time, literally appear to her in dreaming, then in the in-between passages, that liminal space between sort of being awake and asleep. And then one day while she was sitting at a conference with all her work colleagues, she saw them in the room with her, right? She thought she was having a nervous breakdown, just like she was hallucinating, which rightly so, because especially she wrote this back in the I think maybe like the 80s, So it's different now, but for her it was immensely frightening. But look how incredible that is, in she literally later met the tribe that was interacting with her in her
Yeah.
dreaming. They were a very reclusive tribe in the Amazon. She helped them set up nonprofits that's
Wow.
it's responsible for saving a large part of the rainforest, you know.
Incredible. And
So yeah,
yeah, and this is the perfect example of what I was saying, that like she was not special, again in quotes, like it can happen to anyone. Everyone can have this experience, and this connection can feel and experience in waking life, this connection
absolutely.
once they start to pay attention to their dreams.
That's right. And I think that's what I love about this so much. This is not, you don't need to be gifted, you know, you need to be talented.
Exactly.
We're naturally born with this. I think the same, we're actually naturally born intuitive, to be honest. I really think it's the exact same thing. You're not special, you're not gifted. You're literally just learning how to pay attention to subtle cues, and you train the memory, and you train like your muscle memory to receive, right? And I think dreaming is the exact same thing, you know. So if anyone's listening and thinking, well, I haven't ever had that experience, or oh, Athena, that sounds great, like you're patient or whatever, my advice is don't take my word for it. Just dream journal. If you can dream journal for 40 days, just 40 days,
Yeah.
you know, it's actually not so long. People say, oh, that's a long time. It's really not in the grand scheme of things. Just try, see, and sit back and see if you can see a theme. Sit back and see if your dreams become more vivid. Sit back and see if you start to see symbols in waking life that mirror those dreams, you know? And maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm lucky that I haven't ever had anyone come back to me and say, no, nothing happened, you know?
There you go.
So something always happens. And I feel like for people who have like dream drafts, I know a lot of people will say, I can't remember my dreams even though I want to. Then I just think start to work like in other pathways, like yoga nidra is a great pathway, sound is a great pathway. Take the pressure off, and then try and remember the last dream that you had and write it down. And that writing is such a symbolic act of reconnection and physical act of reconnection. And then just see what arises. You know, dreaming for me as is healing is something that can be rhythmic, can be a lifelong process, and can also be a practice that we return to when we really need. You know, sometimes that's more than others, and other times it's just more long term, you know, where like we were saying earlier, there's no perfect way. There's no perfect arrival point. There's no perfect way of doing this work. It's just very honest, you know.
Yeah,
It's kind
it's
of
so
honest.
beautifully said. And I feel that we could keep talking and
I know.
talking for another hour, two or three, but I would like to be respectful of your time. So before we wrap up, I would like to ask where our listeners can find more information about you, about the book that's coming out, and are there any other like events or programs or anything that you would like to share with all the dreamers listening?
Thank you so much. The best place for people to find out more is on my website, which is www.athenalaz.com. And then my book, Woman Who Dance in the Dark, and the Alchemy of Your Dreams. And then the rest of all those creations are on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all the big stores. So wherever people generally look.
Amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
And will there be an audiobook? Because I love audiobooks. Are you
Yes,
planning
there
to?
will be. I
Yes.
did record it. It was a lot of fun recording it. So yes,
Oh, that's
there's.
wonderful. That's wonderful because you have also such a calming and nice voice
Thank
and
you.
an accent. So I would just love to keep listening to you. That's the bottom line. And I love
Oh,
audiobooks.
likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thank thank
So
you.
thank you so much, Athena. I'm going to add the links to your website in the description of this episode. And yes, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and
Thank
all
you.
these beautiful ideas and new archetypes.